Hi, I'm Amy Grack Nelson, Evaluation and Research Manager at the Science Museum of Minnesota. I'm here today presenting on behalf of CASE, the Center for the Advancement of Informal Science Education, and I'm presenting Evaluation Basics, Planning for Improvement and Measuring Impact. I'm going to give you an overview of evaluation and the process of carrying out an evaluation, as well as share some resources that we have available on the CASE website. So today I'm going to focus just on two types of evaluation: formative evaluation and summative evaluation. Formative evaluation, the purpose is to identify areas of improvement, and this takes place while a program is still in development. This allows you to gather data so that you can make changes and help to meet the outcomes of the project. And formative evaluation, hopefully, is more of an iterative process where you're collecting some data, making some changes, and then collecting some additional data. Summative evaluation is when the project is done being developed. And the purpose of this is to measure the impact of the program to see if it's meeting the intended outcomes for the audiences. One way to think of this is thinking about soup. So this image shows formative and summative evaluation of soup. So formative evaluation is when the chef is tasting the soup. This is when it's being made and they're thinking about, does it need more salt? Does it need more of something else? And they're making those changes to improve the soup before it's served. When the soup is done, this is when summative takes place. And this is when guests taste the soup and they make a judgment of how good it is. And they might also say, you know, it needs some salt. And so the chef might say, well, next time I'm going to do it, I'm going to add some more salt. And this is when summative can also become formative. So summative hopefully gives you some feedback that can help you either still improve the program or help you improve future projects that you might be doing. Now, when we're thinking about evaluation, it's focused on the outcomes we're evaluating. What is it that we want people who are involved in our project to take away from the project? And these are some common outcomes of informal science learning. So things like awareness, knowledge, and understanding, engagement or interest, changes in attitudes, behavior change, skills, and other outcomes such as seeing themselves as someone who does science, like identity. So when we're thinking of planning an evaluation, there's various things that we keep in mind when we're doing this process. So the first thing we might think about is the evaluation questions. So this is the purpose of the evaluation. Why are we doing this? Like I said before, it could be formative or summative, but then it's even further. Is it there particular changes you might be curious about if you're doing formative? Certain things that you're wondering, do they work or are people understanding this? For summative, this, like I said before, is related to, did the project address its outcomes? So what was the impact of the project? Was it successful? And these questions then help guide us as we're deciding what evaluation methods and the sample that we're going to use. So thinking about the data collection methods, and I'll be talking a little bit more about this in a minute, is what are those methods that we're using to gather the information? What is best going to get what we need to answer our evaluation questions? And then the sample is, who are those people that we need to talk to? Who is this project reaching? And so this might include children, it might be adults, it might be groups of adults and children, but identifying who are those people I need to get information from. And then how are you going to get information from those people? What is your sampling plan? Are you going to talk to everybody who's in the project? Or is there a way that you're going to sample and just choose particular people? Sometimes we might need to recruit people. If it's like an online project and you don't know who all those people are, you might need to do some recruitment to get a sample of people that you can gather some information from. And then you have all this information that you've gathered for people and you need to do some data analysis of that. I'll be talking a little bit about that, a little more about that in a minute as well. So data analysis is how you're making sense of this data, how you're taking it and putting it into information that you can use. And then reporting. How are you going to share this information back with the various audiences that might be interested in the evaluation? So that might be the people that have developed the project. It might also be the people that the project reaches. So you might do a formal evaluation report, or you might do something shorter like a memo or a brief, or even do some data visualization to help convey information in an easier way for people to understand. Those are things that you would talk to the different audiences or talk to the project leads to figure out what reporting is going to work best for them. So throughout this whole process, what's important is that you're thinking about use and planning for use, because the goal of evaluation is that we're getting useful information that people can use to make decisions about their projects. So finding out from the project leads what information is most useful. There's a lot of different questions people have, and sometimes people are just curious about things, but it's really getting down to what's going to be most useful for you, because you're asking people for their time to give you information. So you want to make sure that you're using the best use of their time by getting information that's going to be most useful for the project. And so that comes down also to the data collection methods. So each piece of information you're collecting, so like in a survey, every question you're asking, how is that information going to be used? Ask yourself and ask the project leads, how is that information going to be used? Do we really need to ask this question? Are we getting that information somewhere else? So part of it is, again, we're asking people to give us information, and so we want to get the most from them and making sure the information they do give us is something that we can use. And then how does reporting help to facilitate use? How can we report in a way that makes sure people are going to read it? If we give somebody an 80-page report, they might not look at it, it might go on the shelf, and then information isn't used. So you just put all this time and energy into an evaluation and got information from people, and it wasn't very useful. So how do we talk to people throughout the process to figure out what's the best way to report this? And this might be not even creating a report, but just bringing the data to the people who are part of the project and leading the project and looking at the data together and figuring out and making sense of that data. So it might just be a data discussion to help make meaning together. When we think about data collection methods, there's a variety of methods you can use. And really, this goes back to the purpose of the evaluation and what kind of information you need and what's going to best answer your questions. So it might include surveys, and that could be in-person paper surveys or a survey you might do online. It might be interviews that you do, might be observations where you may have an observation protocol of here's some certain things that you're looking for and seeing how often those things happen or don't happen or how long somebody does things. Or you might have more free-form observations where you're just taking notes of kind of what's happening in the project. You might do focus groups, which are more group interviews, or you might have some interactive methods. At the museum I work at, we often try to see where are those instances where we can do methods that seem more like hands-on experience we're offering than taking a test or doing a survey. And there's a lot of other ways that you can collect data that I can show in the resources at the end of this. But this image here is just one example of an interactive method of gathering data. So this is what's called carousel sheets, where you have a big sheet of white paper and you write a question in the middle. And there's people throughout the room who are in the program, and there's different sheets, and different sheets have different questions. And everyone has a pile of Post-it notes, and they go through, and as they get the sheet, they answer that question and write one answer on each Post-it. So in this instance, it was, what was your least favorite thing about being in this program? And why was it your least favorite? And this was a youth development program. And so youth, they wrote the answers, they put it on the sheet, they'd have a certain amount of time for each question, they'd change and go to the next question. And then after they were done, and you can see here that the youth then took all those Post-its and grouped them together and made some themes. So the circles are themes that they made to help kind of analyze that data on the spot and make meaning of the data together. So that's just another example of kind of different interactive methods you might want to try. So then you have all your data and you have to analyze it. So you might have quantitative data, or you might have qualitative data, or you might have both. So quantitative data are the numbers. So this is the counts and percents that you might report. You might do statistical analyses on this data. And typically we like to use graphs or some way to visualize these results instead of just having numbers, because that helps people better understand the data. And this, you get quantitative data typically from surveys, the closed-ended questions on the surveys, and also things like observations where you might be counting how frequently something happens. But then we also might get qualitative data. And this is the data where it's more descriptive. It helps describe the information or the numbers that we have. And what you can do with that data, so if you have qualitative data, say from an interview, or you might have it on a survey where you have some open-ended questions, then you can take those responses and you can analyze them using code. So what you would do is you would look at these, all these responses, and you might already have some set codes in your head. So if you had a program that was about space and you had particular things that you're hoping people would learn about space, and you had a question that was, what is something new you learned about space, for example, you might look and see how many people mentioned those things that we wanted them to learn. And so you could use those as your codes to start with, but then there might be other things that come up from the data, that emerge from the data, that you would also add as codes. And sometimes when you do this, depending on especially questions around understanding, you might also bring to light some areas where people have misconceptions about something, or maybe something that you're trying to convey with your project, but it doesn't seem to be coming across right, or it's coming across wrong. They're getting something out of your project that you weren't expecting. So you then code this data, and then you can quantify it into themes. So here you can see that here's a table with the themes related to people go and see something about Mars, and what questions do they still have about what it would be like to live at Mars. And so the responses were categorized into themes around daily life, the climate on Mars, surviving on Mars, and the infrastructure on Mars. And you can see this many percent of people had a response that we were coding in that way. And you might also include in a report some quotes to help exemplify what it is people were talking about. Typically, what's nice in a study is to use what's called mixed methods, where you use both quantitative and qualitative data. And this is nice because the qualitative data can help explain, describe the numbers you have. So if you have a question, a ratings question, for example, you're asking someone to rate how much they agree with something, or how much they enjoyed something. You might have a follow-up question that you're asking them to explain their response. So then you can understand not only how many people enjoyed or didn't enjoy a project or a program, but then why that might be. And those whys are really important to help you understand how you could improve it, or what could be done better in the future. So that gives you a general overview of evaluation process. And I know that's very high level. But I'm going to show you now some resources that you can dig into deeper to really help you understand, if you were going to carry out an evaluation, what you could do and what you would need to do that. And CASE, we have a lot of great resources for you that are freely available for you to use. And CASE is a resource center of the National Science Foundation's Advancing Informal STEM Learning Program, which is a federal program in the United States. Okay, so I'm going to click on informalscience.org is the website for CASE, where you can find all the resources that I'll be sharing. So on the CASE website, informalscience.org, you can find a lot of great resources. One area on here is design evaluation. And these are a lot of resources and information for you to design an evaluation, as well as to work with an evaluator. So there's information, just an overview of what is evaluation, information about working with an evaluator if you're a principal investigator or a project manager who wants to hire someone to do an evaluation. This can help give you some guidance on that. There's a lot of different resources and handbooks about developing an evaluation plan. We have links to various tools and instruments that are around evaluating informal science education or STEM programs. And so these are ones that you might want to use, or you might want to just look at to develop your own. There's resources about evaluation reporting and dissemination, some ideas on different ways to report, what to think about in reports, as well as data visualization. And then you can learn more about evaluation through different professional organizations and journals. The final thing I want to show you is, if you go back to the homepage of the website, a great thing about the CASE website is that they have a collection of reports and instruments that people have submitted. And so you can search the collection. So I'm going to put space, I had searched earlier, and I'm going to put evaluation. And what this is going to do is show me all of the things that people have submitted related to space. And so you can see there's various evaluation reports. If you look at resource type, you can see evaluation reports as well as instruments. So there's some observation protocols, interview protocols, surveys. These are really useful to look at as you're thinking about doing evaluation, to help inform what you might do and learn from others. So I hope today you got kind of a more general overview of evaluation, and I hope you'll go and check out all of these resources that are available on CASE to help you learn even more. Thanks.